Good morning, everyone. It's now time to start our workshop, Ethics in the Library, and we're privileged enough today to have Tammy from Three Rivers Library System, and she's going to give an overview of the Code of Ethics from the American Library Association, and then talk about some individual scenarios that can come up that will test or highlight how unethical situations may happen in the library. And so we'll go ahead and turn it over to Tammy.
Hi, well, thank you for having me here today. Like Autumn said, I'm Tammy with the Three Rivers Library System. Let's see if I can advance. There we go. So yes, just talking about what ethics mean, and kind of made a word chart here, and all kinds of words pop out. Ideal, beliefs, moral, integrity. I think it's just such an overreaching word that it can encompass so many different things. And of course, it's all different dynamics when it applies to a library. The term ethics is derived from the Greek word, and I'm probably butchering this, but ethikos, which itself is derived from the Greek word ethos, meaning customer, character, and a moral philosophy and code of morals. And in this case, how it's practiced by the library. So the Code of Ethics of the American Library Association, that had to have been a hard job to come up with those, because it has to address the Boston Public Library and little bitty burg in Nebraska to try to encompass all of that. So that's why it's made in broad statements, just as a guide. So these statements provide a framework. They cannot and do not dictate conduct to cover particular situations, which is why it's kind of fun to have a discussion about it, because everybody will see things a little differently, and a lot of that's based on your own communities also. So we've got some different scenarios, and I'm curious how everyone would handle them. So in this case, you have Dave, who's a city council member. He comes from the library and he wants some information, but he's in a hurry. He's on his lunch. And in this case, it's a smaller library. You're the only staff member there, and you're in the middle of helping Richard. And Richard is mentally challenged at an assisted living home, and he's got some conspiracy theories he wants you to make copies for. He's building his file in his case, and you've tried to train him how to use the copy machine, and he needs your help with everything. So with this case, what do? Do you stop helping Richard? And because, you know, Dave's city council, he's in a hurry. He's got a job to get back to, Richard doesn't. Or do you let Dave, the city council member, know, oh, you're going to have to wait. I've already helping Richard here. Or do you tell Richard, hey, maybe wait a little bit and I'll help Dave and this will keep you busy? Or is there another idea? Does anybody have ideas what you would do? According to ALA, it says, we provide the highest level of service to all library users through appropriate and useful organized resources, equitable service policies, equitable access, and accurate, unbiased, and courteous responses to all requests. And this is kind of my interpretation of what that all means. All library patrons deserve the same respect and treatment. A child deserves the same level of care as an adult. Homeless patrons deserve to be treated as well as city council members. Each request should be given equal consideration. And if you cannot offer service to someone for some reason, you need to find a way to accommodate that patron. For example, if there's language barrier. And service should be offered without judgment or bias. Personal opinions do not belong in a professional environment. So the bottom line is all people in the community are entitled to equal unbiased library services, and all questions deserve equal treatment. So based on that, you would continue helping Richard first and Dave. But in the real world, in rural communities, there may be some wiggle room.
Tammy, I was going to ask you, what is the right answer? Because I know that what I would try and do, yes, everybody's entitled to the equal service. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you telling me the answer?
Please go ahead. No, the answer would be, I think would be to continue helping Richard. But this is a real case scenario in my world. I would, as long as Richard wouldn't get totally agitated, I would probably ask him to wait, because yeah, if someone's in a hurry and if someone else is okay with waiting, why not? In the real world, you just,
Well,
yeah, right answer, wrong answer. It's all
right. Yeah, I agree. That's the whole thing about ethics. There's no particular answer. But like, if it's like being in the grocery store and having a cart that's overflowing, and then somebody walks up behind you with two things. And when I see that happen and I'm the one with the overflowing cart, I generally say, please go ahead of me. I don't mind waiting. And so I know information isn't a grocery cart, but if it's something, it depends on what the councilman needs. If he is needing your attention for an hour, then he's going to have to wait.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes.
If it's something that you can answer for him in pretty short order, I would find, if I know the other person really well, and I know what will kind of not entertain, but keep him occupied and interested for a short period of time, and I can help the other individual. It's a matter of keeping the lines down. It's not about that. One for me is yes, if he needs my undivided attention for quite some time, then he gets in line. If he has a short answer, if I can answer it within just a few minutes, then I'm going to try and adjust the workload so that the shortest one gets answered and done. But of course, you can't continue to do that, because then the person, there comes a point where you have to just go with it and let them wait in line.
Right. Does anybody have any examples? On this one, I always think of is, here's a kid that's playing games on the computer, and here comes an adult that wants to do a job search. To me, it's no brainer that you let the adult go, because it's kind of an important task of life. But based on the code of ethics, they deserve equal, which I think that's kind of why librarians often put time limits on computers. I mean, that's an example that I think of. Because children, it's easy enough to say, well, they're just kids, they're just playing. But any other examples?
And that's another reason, Tammy, that a lot of libraries that can afford it will put one or two computers in the teen area or in the children's area and put a big sign on them that says, these are for children's use only. Mm-hmm. And so then if the adults, they'll see, oh gosh, all the adult computers are full, I'll just go over and kick a kid off. Well, then you can't do that.
Right, because they've been given equitable resources. Yeah, it's tough. Ethics is tough, I think, because you always want to be fair. Next scenario. A new book has come out that is sparking lots of controversy. And I think this is relevant this year. Everything's so wonky with censorship. However, it is on several bestseller lists, and a few patrons have asked when you'll be getting it at the library. You heard that this book was challenged in the neighboring town. Personally, you do not agree with the content of the book based on various reviews you've read. So, do you not order the book because you don't need the hassle of dealing with the challenge, especially if it's a book you wouldn't read? So why bring on the drama? Do you tell the patrons that want the book, hey, why don't you guys buy it and then you can pass it around so everyone gets to read it? That way the library is out of the loop and the patrons are happy and everyone gets to read it. Or do you order the book because it's what patrons want and you put policies in place and you trust that they're ready to deal with any challenges, and you keep your personal opinions out, or any other option? Any ideas on how you would, what is right, and how you would handle it? Yeah, Matthew says no brainer. See, you order the books, you have your policies. And what a fun opportunity to handle, see if you got them in place, it'll work, right? Yeah, what Matt said, which I have heard of librarians doing too. Well, why don't you guys just buy it? Which I think is funny, but
Well, there's a twist on that. At my library, I had a donation of a book that could do damage to people because of the content. And I was a chicken. I passed it off to my adult services librarian and said, think about our policies of our collection development. Think about what our collection looks like, what our patrons need, and you decide if we're adding it, because it was donated by a very ardent library patron who wanted it on the shelf. So I was a chicken.
good for you for admitting that. Yeah, it puts librarians in a tough spot. And yeah, everybody's saying orders definitely C. Laura at Grand Island said, if there are other quality books offering an alternative viewpoint, which I think that's great. It keeps everything balanced and information out there. And like Gail said, if only one person asked to order it, it'd be different than if several asked. Okay, and this is ALA's. We will uphold the principles of intellectual freedom and resist all efforts to censor library resources. And I think as a librarian, your own personal censorship is hard. If you feel really strongly one way, you need to push that aside and have fair information out there for everyone. But it's hard to keep your personal and professional separate sometimes. Okay, and basically what it means, and I think everybody knows this, library patrons deserve access to all information, should not be limited to just what is deemed safe. Policy should be designed to protect intellectual freedom and prevent censorship. Library staff should make every effort to keep their personal biases out of their professions. And the collection should be well-rounded to be inclusive for all patrons. Bottom line is collection development should be done to reflect the wants and needs of the community without personal or outside influence. So I'm glad Laura shared that example. Does anyone else have examples they'd like to share? Laura said, has anyone actually reached that zenith of leaving personal bias at home on a regular basis? I think it's got to be impossible.
Right.
Like,
As long as you're aware of it, you know, that's the thing about bias, is if you know you have that bias, then you can work against it. I think the hardest thing is kids' books. Don't you guys think that's the worst part? I mean, because you figure if you put something in the adult collection, yeah, the kids go over there too. But if you put something in the children's collection, it can feel like you are putting it in a child's hands, because you are, keeping in mind that we all will tell you that it's the parent's responsibility to decide what their child does or doesn't read. If they're not involved enough to either read it first or check it out, you know, look through and look at the reviews or whatever, if they're, then that's on a parent. But, you know, then they say, well, I depended on you.
What happens here a lot is instead of telling us to get rid of things, or telling us to add things that they want. And a lot of these things are not, they don't really meet our criteria. But again, sometimes you're chicken and you just put them in because it's the easiest thing to do, when really they're not reviewed favorably anywhere. They're not reviewed at all. And we get things like board books about creationism with dinosaurs on the ark, and things like that. And then, we want this board book to be in here. Well, does it meet our criteria? Not really, because no place has talked about that book anywhere. It's not really reviewed well. We've been putting them in, and I'm not sure that that's the best thing to do sometimes. I get some of them. There are a few that really bug me because they're so unscientific. So that's a tough one for me, because they found that is a good approach to say, well, you've got to be fair. You've got to have both sides of the issue. Well, no, not always. I mean, both sides of the issue on the Holocaust. No, I don't think I need to. I don't think that's always the case. And that I know is a big thing, like down in Texas with the schools and things that they've been dealing with.
I think after a while, if you do collection development enough, to chime in on what Matt said, your personal bias, you're aware of it, but that doesn't mean you aren't doing your job effectively. You just have to keep in mind as you read those reviews, or you take in mind the community or who's requesting it. You do the best job you can. And if in 2 years it hasn't checked out, even though they hollered and stomped to get it in the collection, then you weed it, using still your best practices of being a librarian. So it's like, how much of a battle do you want? And is it okay once in a while to do that? I don't know. I just think we do the best we can, and you can't escape having biases because we're human.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about knowing your community. I mean, that's really key. If you buy a book, okay, we should have this because whatever, but you know your community enough to know it'll never be checked out.
You never know.
I think Christy hit on another good point, which is having policies in place, a weeding policy that allows you to examine based on use in a specific time frame or in a reasonable time frame based on the collection. I don't weed picture books the same way I weed adult nonfiction because they don't have the same shelf life.
Very good.
Well, the tough thing is, like, we had somebody who wanted us to get, and we did get it, a picture book that's basically about abortion, anti-abortion. Well, we don't buy pro-abortion picture books generally for toddlers. And and I was a little irked at this thing being out there for toddlers, that they need to really think about the issue when they're a toddler.
Yeah, the kids. Wow.
It's tough sometimes.
Yeah, wow, a lot of great discussion. Okay, see if I can get this to advance. Okay, there we go, finally. Okay, remember Richard from the first scenario? Apparently he sent some of his conspiracy theory information to the wrong person, and he is being investigated. So the police are in your library asking you questions. You have, throughout the past several months, inadvertently read a few of the passages on the various letters and documents. You're copying something, you happen to glance at it. So you thought they were a little bit bizarre and scary, but you figured it was all harmless. So here's the police. What do? You tell them everything you remember, including the dates and times and the passages that you read and your own opinions. And police are doing their job. Or do you inform the police that they need to get the proper court documents in order to retrieve information from the library? That patron privacy is an important aspect for the library, and you don't keep any records of the library anyway. Or do you check your scrap pile because you know that there's some that didn't copyright, so you didn't throw them away, you used them for scrap. So You know, it's just his silly notion. So you actually might have some papers there. Or do you have other suggestions? And Matthew says proper documents, B, even though my boss is the lieutenant in the police department. Oh, that would be an interesting story, Laura. But yes, patron privacy, again, no matter who it is, they deserve their privacy. And I know in small towns especially, it's like, wow, here's some paper that didn't print right, you'll just keep it. Yeah, chances are you probably shouldn't do it because you never know what's on the backside that might be private. All right, happy to help the police if they provide me with a proper document.
Well, and when they're standing there, it's tough though. Yeah, if they're properly trained officers of the law, they understand that they need good documentation. But that isn't always the case in the really small towns. They're going to say, well, what are you talking about? I was asked to advise, or I went and did a presentation on privacy at a library in the state of Nebraska. And then I got a call from the director there that said her children's librarian was not cooperating with the police. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, there's a teenager, I don't know, she was 14 or 15, a girl who was missing. And the police came in to find out the last time she was in the library, what she was checking out, what, you know, they wanted to see the checkout records. They wanted to know who she'd been talking to, you know, when she was there, how often she came, you know, all of those things. They wanted everything this person could tell them about this 15-year-old. And she was saying no, and she was citing my presentation on privacy. And so, yeah, they just wanted to know what she already still had checked out. And again, it's a small enough town. The children's librarian probably kind of knew when the kid was in and out and who she was hanging out with, but she wasn't going to tell the police because they didn't have any documentation. They just said, well, her parents called and she's gone. And they said, so this library director was leaning on me to call her staff person and say, I was wrong, you need to talk to the police. And I didn't. But again, as a mother who had teenage children at one point, I don't anymore, thankfully, but it was terrifying. I thought, oh my gosh, what if something happens to this child? But then you think the other direction, what if the child is someplace safe? If there was a problem at home, maybe she's 15, maybe there was a problem at home. Maybe there was something happening to her that she needed to get out of there. You know, I just didn't know, but I stuck with the light. And then it comes down to, like Laura said at first, we can't rely on our memory. Because what if she said, oh yeah, she was in here yesterday and she was looking at travel books about Florida. Well, you know, maybe she forgot that it was a different kid that was in here yesterday. You know, we don't keep track of that stuff. And that would be the answer, is we don't have records to that degree. And no, we can't tell you what she checked out unless you have proper documentation. But yes, that library director was not happy with me. I haven't been invited back. Thank you. But, you know, that's, it's hard when they're standing there in front of you saying, you need to help me. I need to know what this child checked out or what this adult checked out. Maybe it's an adult, maybe it's Richard, our adult who is not maybe able to travel on his own. And now he's gone. Yeah, it's tough, but I based it on privacy and confidentiality.
Right, and then to take it that other level, what if someone's in looking to try to figure out how to build a bomb and then they go and build a bomb? I mean, who wants that on their conscience, you know?
Right. And Matt mentioned that the library records definitely are confidential. Whether or not someone comes in the library, that gets a little dicier. It depends on how hardline you are on privacy. I know a lot of libraries have security cams. It's whether or not you give the police the footage to that without proper documentation. And a security camera won't have a faulty memory as an individual would. So that's what I was saying to them about, I don't think it's a good idea for you to say she was here yesterday and the day before and the day before that, because maybe you weren't working when she came in, or maybe, hey, I haven't seen this kid in a month. Maybe you just weren't working when she came in, you know, or maybe you're on break or on your dinner or whatever. So you can't say with authority when that person was in the library. You just can't, because you're not there 24/7. You're not, or every hour the library's open, unless you're the only librarian there. So, which I know is the case sometimes, but.
Right, I think there's a difference between the situation Denise is putting forward with a potential lost child / teenager versus like if there's been an accident in my parking lot and they want video of the car striking the other car. I don't have a problem doing that.
Right, that is different.
Maybe I should be asking for documentation first. But I don't feel like that's invading someone's privacy. They're in a public space in my parking lot and they drove into someone else.
Yeah, I think that's different. Yeah, so many different levels and situations.
Yeah, you don't have any expectation of privacy when you're in a public parking lot.
And ALA's, their ethic quote is, we protect each library user's right to privacy and confidentiality with respect to information sought or received in resources consulted, borrowed, acquired, or transmitted. But yeah, that's different than being in a parking lot. But yeah, there's different levels of toughness with that. And so what happens in the library stays in the library. You don't share when someone was looking up with your friend or with your spouse, which I think that would be tough too. You don't share a patron's records with anyone, not even a parent or spouse. Policies should reflect the importance of confidentiality for patron records. And again, policies are so important. It's hard to know what your policy should say until something comes up. But so I guess it's an evolving process. In any in-library talk amongst staff about patrons should be done in private because there are ears usually. So the bottom line is libraries must protect each user's right to privacy and confidentiality to the greatest extent they can. But yeah, we already had some great examples, so thank you, everybody. Okay, the next question. The library board is trying to come up with fundraising ideas for the library. One of them tells you about a great fundraiser that a group in the local school had done. They showed a movie outside, drive-in style, in a farmer's pasture. They collected money as goodwill donations and made great profit. Inwardly, you see as it is, of course, easy to make a profit when you do it underhandedly without paying the required fees to avoid copyright infringement. When you mention this as tactfully as possible, the board member waves your concerns aside. Who does that hurt? They didn't get caught and we won't either. It'll be fun. Because as we know, there's different policies, you know, different requirements and fees attached to that. So do you refuse to take any part in it? It's important for libraries to maintain integrity and a moral stance. Do you go along with the fundraising plans? You know, why not? Who gets hurt? Or do you turn the school in because why should they get by with that? So what's everybody think on this? A, that's probably what I think. And also look up how much the fine is for the copyright violation and show it. Oh, that's a good point. Show it to the board president. A, yes. That's a great point. And yes, I speak from this to experience. The pasture was a mile away and it's like, oh, that was never fair. I would like to do something like that, but I could never afford it as a public librarian. But, and yes, integrity is important. We respect intellectual property rights and advocate balance between the interests of information users and right holders. And yes, explain about the movie licenses. Yeah, I don't know that it's a well-known fact, but you have to pay a fee for those things. You can't just do a fundraiser out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so what does this mean? Although libraries are intended to be a place to gather information, that information must be obtained in a legal and ethical manner. Policies and procedures should reflect the balance of the information users and the rights holders. Got a message right in front of there. Librarians should maintain a constant awareness of copyright laws and requirements. Librarians should abide by those copyright laws and requirements at all times. And librarians often place notices of copyright requirements on copiers, printers, and such to advise patrons of copyright laws. Because that's another level, is what if someone prints something that's totally violation of copyright? Is the library responsible? You know, so if you put that disclaimer on the copier, at least I think that protects libraries. So the bottom line, libraries must respect and follow the balance that allows patrons to gain information without violating the laws that protect the rights holders. So any other examples or conversation on this? If not, we'll go on. Oh, sheet music is a big problem. Oh yes, I never thought about that. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so you finish up after a busy week at the library and you're happy to see that latest bestseller that you've been dying to read is still on the shelf. So you pick it up and bring it to the circulation desk. And your coworker, Bertha, which I hope no one here is named Bertha, she's working the desk and says, you know, you should wait and check that out when it's not as popular. You know, go put it back and pick out something else. So what do you think? As a librarian, are you able to pick out the bestsellers and take it home on a weekend? So do you? Yes. Yeah. So do you put the book back and make a different selection? Bertha's right. Patrons should come first. You'll just wait, even if you're disappointed. You wait till Bertha's gone and then you go check it out anyway, because why should you have to wait? Or do you remind Bertha that employees are patrons too? You're off the clock, so you're not even really an employee at that point, and you deserve equal respect, fairness, and good faith. And yes, see, if it's on the shelf, staff should be treated as patrons too. And yeah, there aren't any holds. So the fifth code of ethics is we treat coworkers and other colleagues with respect, fairness, and good faith, and advocate conditions of employment that safeguard the rights and welfare of all employees of our institution. And it means employees have the right to fair treatment, should be treated with respect. The library environment should have an adequate conditions conducive to employee well-being. And all efforts should be made to create a welcoming environment for staff as well as for patrons. So bottom line, library employees deserve respect, fairness, and good faith. Any examples on that or any comments?
Well, the example changes just a teeny bit if the book is on the back shelf waiting to be cataloged, and then you keep it for 2 weeks and then it gets cataloged and then it goes out to the first hold. You know, those kind of things come up sometimes that you hear about, and that's when that's taking unfair advantage. When it's on the shelf and there's no holds on it, yes, indeedy, you're a patron just like anybody else and you can check it out. It's the tricky part of it is when it's still in the back room and the public who probably have placed holds on it. Or the other,
When you're always the first one on hold for the new materials.
yeah, that's it too. Yeah. Or if you check it out and you don't have time to get to it, and so then they you keep renewing it because you can renew it. You're there a lot of days of the week and you just keep renewing it, even though there might be holds on it because you can override that, and so, that gets tricky.
Yeah, like Gail says, if the staff reads it, they might be able to promote it more, reader advisory.
Mhm.
And Laura in Grand Island says it's policy that employees can only take the book out of the building if it's been processed and checked out to the employee. Yeah, that would be a hard one too, if you see a book there that, oh, it's not released until Tuesday, because that's when the publication date is, but we got it on Saturday. Can I take it home for the weekend? Yeah, there's all kinds of gray areas. Okay, it's the next one. It's election time and Bertha has been busy putting up a display to encourage voting. You can't help but notice that there are a lot of books in the display for only one political party. And you walk around the display and you notice there's no other reference to another different political party. You mention it to Bertha and she says, why would anyone want to read about any of those losers? These are the only books that really count. Okay, it's pretty obvious, I think, but okay, since your political stance is the same as Bertha's, you let it go. Or you remind Bertha that your personal views cannot ethically be reflected in displays or collections. Or you immediately tell your supervisor or manager because Bertha is always trying to push her own agenda and it gets tiring. Or other suggestions. B. I wonder at what level you would tell the supervisor manager. Oh, see if she refuses to comply and it's appropriate. Thanks, Laura. So number 6 of the ethics is we do not advance private interests at the expense of our library users, colleagues, or our employing institutions. And yes, Matthew, it depends on how many times Bertha's gotten away with it after telling her.
And if I'm her boss and I've given her that directive, that's a totally different situation than just being a coworker.
Oh, absolutely. So what it means is the library's collection should be well balanced, not simply a reflection of the library's personal likes or views. Librarians should refrain from wearing political attire or pins while at work. While librarians are entitled to his or her own beliefs and ideals, they should not allow them to interfere with their profession. And as a public servant, a library employee should always refrain from allowing personal things to conflict with professionalism. This includes business email being used for a personal agenda. So the bottom line is library employees should make every effort to maintain profession neutrality. Yeah, and again, we're all humans. It's hard to keep that bias out of the limelight when you're making displays or anything else or ordering books. Any examples of any time this may have happened?
Yeah, yeah, that was. I was going to ask you, Tammy, when I was at a circ desk in a city, I was a clerk in Plano, Texas. It was more the patrons would come in and they would be telling us their ideas of how it should be. They'd check out a book and say, oh, have you read this? This is the best guy ever. You should, or, and you'd really just have to nod and say, I don't comment on the material. If it gets serious, then you can say, I don't comment on the materials people borrow. Thank you for checking out today. Goodbye.
A good response, yes.
It's tough because they come and they stand and there could be people in line or there could be others close to the desk. And if you just agree, because sometimes that's easier. And believe me, I did the easy thing sometimes because we had different patrons that were very adamant about their beliefs. And it's easier to just kind of smile and not say anything one way or the other. So it looks like you're agreeing, but that's difficult then, because if other people see that, then they might think, well, that's how they think around here. I don't think I belong here. So
I have often advised my employees that the statement that usually works for me is, I don't discuss my personal politics when I'm at work. Is there anything at the library I can help you with today? And that usually shuts it down pretty well.
that's a
And it
good one.
doesn't say I don't respect you, but I'm not discussing my personal feelings and my beliefs, especially with local politics now.
Yeah, it's tough. Jennifer said, we used to have an employee that was very vocal about her political views on any given day. We have discussed that no one needs to hear this opinion. Please just check out the books. Yeah, it's a good tip. Yeah, those patrons want the engaging conversation. So it's hard to draw that line. I mean, reader advisories, a librarian things, but not when it's not when it's such a volatile topic. Any other comments? Okay, Bertha is at it again. She has decorated every square inch of the library for Christmas. She even has some Christmas music playing a bit too loudly over the speakers. And you overhear a couple of patrons complaining that there is no place to go to avoid the Christmas season. They expressed disappointment that even the library, supposedly a neutral place, welcoming to everyone, has joined the bombardment club. You recently read an article and the author made some valid points. And just a disclaimer here, I think rural Nebraska is a lot different. I think everybody would be disappointed without decoration for Christmas. But I've read a lot about it. Some librarians absolutely will not decorate for Christmas because they know their communities. So again, it's key to know your communities. So the article said, those of us who do not celebrate Christmas may be far and few between, but the irony is during the season of love, peace, and goodwill, many feel anything but those things. For that reason, I do not decorate the library for Christmas, Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa. I stick with neutral motifs of snow, snowmen, and the New Year in order to support all patrons. I want my library to be a safe haven for everyone, and in this way, I try to lead tolerance by not decorating the public secular space of the library for Christmas. So for Bertha, what do? You share the article with Bertha, suggest you tone the decorations and music down a bit to make sure everyone's comfortable. You spend all year looking forward to Christmas, so you aren't going to let some crabby patrons spoil the fun of the holiday season. If they don't like it, they can come back in January. Or you immediately tell your supervisor manager, Bertha is always trying to push her own agenda around and it gets tiring. Laura said we decorate with secular motifs, stars, no stars, a holiday tree, Santa, but don't reference the religious side of things, and probably go with A. Yeah, it's tough. And again, knowing your community is probably the big thing. You want everyone to feel comfortable. So this is number 7. We distinguish between our personal convictions and professional duties and do not allow our personal beliefs to interfere with fair representation of the aims of our institutions or the provisions of access to their information resources. So many of these, in my view, seem to overlap the division between personal and professional. Matthew says we put out trees and greenery. We put out books representing all the holidays in December. And yes, Laura said she likes that. So personal convictions should not influence the professional atmosphere of the library. Consideration should be given to ensure the library is welcoming to all. Respect of diversity and multiculturalism should help guide the tone of the library to serve all patrons equally. Personal convictions of the library staff should not be evident in the library's collection, atmosphere, displays, or other public areas. But the bottom line is the library should be a place of neutrality in order to serve everyone in a professional manner.
I had a woman that she was mad at us for another reason, but she said, "You've already taken Christmas away from us." And I said, "Oh, how so?" And she goes, well, she goes, "You don't have a creche in the library." I said, "Well, in 100 years, the library's never had a creche and no one ever had a problem with it." I mean, it's never had a crash ever. So I don't see what you're getting at. She didn't say anything else.
It's hard to please everyone.
So, we would, and even 100 years ago, they wouldn't have done that in the library, and they're not gonna do it now.
And then Laura said our holiday tree is made of green, red, and blue weeded reference volumes. Wow, I bet that's beautiful. You need to send pictures. Okay, the next one. You've been busy reading articles, watching webinars, attending conferences, going to workshops, and all sorts of continuing education opportunities. You find them enjoyable, and you're always excited to try the new things that you learn. That Bertha. She rolls her eyes at you and passive aggressively makes slight comments about you not doing your job because you're gallivanting around instead of working. So you just ignore Bertha. If she doesn't want to learn new things, that's her problem, not yours. You realize that patrons rely on librarians to keep up on new things, so you encourage Bertha to embrace the continuing education opportunities. You tactfully remind her of number 8, Code of Ethics, remembering that it is your responsibility to encourage your coworkers, or you immediately tell your supervisor and manager because you're getting sick of that darn Bertha. I gallivant as much as possible. That's fun. So yes, we strive for excellence in the profession by maintaining and enhancing our own knowledge and skills, by encouraging the professional development of coworkers, and by fostering the aspirations of potential members of the profession, which I thought that was interesting. I know I had read that once upon a time, but I think it kind of slipped by me that you're supposed to encourage others to evolve with their professional development. So it means that librarians need to continuously maintain and build their skills in order to do their jobs adequately. Yeah, every time I go to a conference or anywhere, I learn something new. Librarians need to always identify areas in which they could benefit from extra training. They should make the effort to encourage the professional development of coworkers, and they should welcome and inspire those who may express an interest in librarianship, like interns. That's why that's so key. And constant learning is part of being a librarian. So the bottom line, in order to remain relevant, librarians need to keep up with library and technology trends and innovations.
I had a city council member ask me once, this was before COVID, about traveling to all these meetings because we live out in the boonies and mileage is quite an expense for us. And I said, well, do you want your library to act in a professional way and know what they're doing or what they're talking about and keeping up with new things? Or do you want us to be old school and not continue on and share all these things with people? And so he kind of changed his mind about the expense after I kind of explained it to him a little bit.
Yeah, good for you. I don't think anyone can appreciate a library that doesn't advance. Any other comments? No, we'll go on to the next one. There we go. Okay, a family has recently moved to town and the matriarch of the family is from Kenya. She wants to meet some of the community members. She offers to provide a presentation at the library, complete with some Kenyan food to sample. You need to determine whether the library should host such a program. So you jump on board with the idea. It's an opportunity to build awareness of diverse cultures, learn from one another, and hey, there's food. You decline the offer as you do not want her noticeably different culture to be even more obvious by giving her a platform. Or you decide that this is such a great idea that you expand on it. You invite others to share their various heritages and you welcome even more food. This may become a regular event in which you celebrate our diverse cultures or other options. Yeah, torn between A and C. Okay, now this one was recently added and it's very lengthy. So We affirm the inherent dignity and rights of every person. We work to recognize and dismantle systemic and individual biases, to confront inequity and oppression, to enhance diversity and inclusion, and to advance racial and social justices in our libraries, communities, profession, and associations through awareness, advocacy, education, collaboration, services, and allocation of resources and spaces. Okay, so this was just adopted in June of this year, and everyone is equally welcome in the library. Efforts are made to provide collection materials and services for diverse communities, promote racial and social justice. So the bottom line is all walks of life are welcome in the library. Efforts are always made to keep awareness and information available for everyone, and equal treatment of all patrons. And Laura says, assuming the event fits our existing policies. Good point. C, after seeing how the first event goes and maybe making some logistical adjustments if necessary. Yeah, good point. Policies should always reflect what is done in the library. So any examples on that one? Oh, I guess when I had done this for Three Rivers, there were a few questions from the registration. I didn't pick it off of here, but maybe that's okay anyway. How to keep peace among vaccinated and non-vaccinated personnel, how to ban problematic people, making friends with patrons. Where do we draw the line? That's hard in small communities and probably even in bigger ones. Is that appropriate? How do we navigate these situations? How to best serve homeless patrons. And making the non-homeless patrons feel comfortable and safe in the library. And if a known dubious character in town comes in to ILL or asks for a book on bomb building, what do I do besides that book is unavailable? So these were just some questions that people had come up with. So if anyone wants to elaborate on those topics, we have some time. In banning problematic people, I think that is policies. You just really have to make sure your policies have evolved to make sure everybody is safe. Because yeah, everyone's welcome, including those problematic people, but it shouldn't be to the exclusion of everyone else.
In our library, we have found that there's some people that live by themselves and they have no family around. And when they come to the library, we may be the only person they have talked to all week. And so sometimes, we might talk a little longer with them than we should, but we feel it's important for that person to have social contact with somebody.
Yeah, libraries are so important. And yes, Ryan Dowd, his book on homeless patrons. And I have read it not all that long ago. I know the Nebraska Library Commission has it available and training available too. Yeah, because that's what he says in his book. Okay, homeless people. Yep, they are people just like your patrons are people. It's not just, they're not a total separate species or anything. So a lot of what is relevant for him working in a homeless shelter is relevant for librarians working with patrons.
Right. And Tammy, the one that's looks like fourth down, how to best serve the homeless patrons, when you're taking into consideration the comfort and the perception of your other patrons, that's the best. You'd have to just treat them like normal. I mean, you can't treat them separately. And your other patrons need to understand that it's a public building. Everyone can come in. There's nobody at the door checking addresses. And I think that part of that comes up because people think it's their own library, which is good. You want them to feel that way. but they need to understand that that's part of the unattended children thing. People get all upset with you because, well, I'm just running down the street. I need to pick up some groceries while the kids are in the program. Yes, this is a 3-year-old, but I'm going to leave her here because I'll be right back. And it's the library after all. Well, it's the library after all. It's a public building. You're leaving me a 3-year-old that no one is caring for? That doesn't happen. That can't happen. Even if that child is in a program, maybe she'll get up to use the bathroom. And the librarian has other children to work with. And so, that's the thing. They need to understand that everyone can come in and everyone will be treated the same. We're not going to run somebody out. Oh, now Laura England Biggs is gallivanting.
Yeah, that's a great point, Denise.
And it is part of the ethics of it. You can't just look down your nose at somebody because they're different or because they're homeless or because they're who they are, because they're just people.
Right. And okay, what about if a homeless person came in and they smelled absolutely horrible and nobody else could be in the library? That's a different level of.
Or the little old lady with the really loud perfume that makes everybody's allergies go crazy. She's not even homeless. She just has really loud perfume. Yeah, those smelly patron ones, those are the trickiest ethical questions.
And I think that's why it's so cool though, as far as like the homeless having resources available, a list of resources for them. They can go to the library and, well, here's where you could go. There's a local homeless shelter that has a shower. I mean, I don't know what more you can offer them, but those resources, you never know who is going to need them. Which small towns, maybe it's not as big of a deal, but there's still people who need help. And
yeah, the list of resources is a great idea.
okay. And have you had any instances in your libraries that made you question the code of ethics? Share questions, comments, other discussions. Okay. Matthew said, I have had to confront the smelly patron. We only do this if other patrons are saying they can't do their work because of it. Yeah, not my favorite thing. Wow, that would be so hard. They have rights, but everyone else has rights too. So I'm curious, Matt, what happened with the smelly patron? Did they handle it well, or did they get upset and defensive?
It's happened maybe 2 or 3 times to me, and generally they are not happy, but they generally do what I've asked. They come, I generally say, I'm getting complaints. Please clean yourself or shower before you come in next time, and generally they do. But they, who would be happy being told that? They're not happy, but I've never had anyone yell at me.
And I'm glad to hear if they come back. That's
Mostly they do come back. Where else are they going to go? Some of them. I mean,
right. And I guess that is all I had, unless there's more comments, because this is such a great discussion. It's very thought-provoking, as Laura said.
Thank you, Tammy, for coming, because you really got our brains working this morning and thinking about those situations that we've all come across and we all encounter in our day-to-day jobs. So thank you for such a great presentation, and I'm sure we all took away something from this.
Good, I hope so. I know I did. Well, thank you. It was great. It was great. I love discussing this kind of stuff.
Thank you so much. And then for everyone, I went ahead and took attendance, so I will turn in your CE hours here in the next few weeks and get those credited to you. So we thank everyone for coming. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.